let's talk to one of his own MPs who's been asked, along with everyone else, to draw a line under that confidence vote and move forward. She is Miriam Cates and joins us now. Good morning to you, Miriam.
Good morning, Julia.
Great to talk to you. Now, you are one of the 211 Tory MPs who voted for the Prime Minister on Monday. You've been fairly critical of quite a number of his major policies, bearing in mind pretty much the whole of the last 2 years have been dominated by lockdown policies. You were part of the COVID recovery group, very critical of the Prime Minister. Why did you decide to support him on Monday?
Well, yes, you're right. I was very critical of the government's policies over lockdown, particularly their effects on children. And I think we are seeing now that many other people are coming round to the point of view that actually the policies were very harmful and not particularly effective either in curbing the spread of COVID. But that was more a criticism of the direction of government, and many governments around the world, I'm afraid, followed exactly the same policies. But I did support the Prime Minister, and I think there are a number of reasons for that. Firstly, of course, the behaviour inside Number 10, the findings of the Sue Gray report were bad. I mean, let's be honest about it. I completely understand why people have been angry about that, why when they suffered so much during lockdown, how difficult it was to see other people breaking the rules and perhaps bending the rules in order to socialise when they couldn't. I understand that entirely. But I think as an MP, my job is to be rational and to be objective about these things. And I personally don't think that that behaviour crossed the threshold for justifying getting rid of a sitting Prime Minister with a huge majority elected just 2.5 years ago.
Can you, backbench MPs, can you draw a line under it as the Prime Minister has called for yesterday? He's facing Prime Minister's questions today. Keir Starmer's going to be able to stand there and all his MPs are going to be able to jeer and say, 4 out of 10 of those MPs on the benches behind you, Prime Minister, don't even want you to be there. Can you draw a line under it? And if so, how? Is it all about tax cuts?
I very much hope we can draw a line under it. Of course, that was a large number of MPs who voted against the Prime Minister. But if we think about how our system works and how leadership elections work, it's very normal for quite a large number of MPs not to get their first choice of Prime Minister. Yeah. At the end of the day, you get down to 2 candidates. One of those candidates gets chosen by the party. It's quite possible that the candidate that does make it as Prime Minister doesn't have the majority backing of the parliamentary party. So I don't think we should worry about that too much. We are a broad church in the party, so there will always be people who don't have their first choice of Prime Minister. But I think what happens now is does everybody accept that result? And I think people like Philip Davis, who did vote against the Prime Minister, came out yesterday and said, yes, we should draw a line under it. It was a fair vote. We should get on with it. That's the crucial test now for our whole party, not just the leadership, the cabinet, but for backbenchers as well. Can we draw a line under it, accept the result, unify under Boris Johnson and continue to govern?
OK, well, I mean, unify and get on with it. The Prime Minister's talking about drawing a line, getting on with the job. He's going to bash on, focus on the things people want. OK, tell my listeners and viewers, what do people want? What are you going to do?
Well, the economy is clearly the number one issue. People are facing huge challenges in the cost of living. They're seeing, inflation rise. It's a very worrying time. I think the Chancellor has done a lot already, but I think we need to look strategically in the long term. What can we do to reduce the cost of the state in people's lives? And I think it's right for Conservatives like me to call for tax cuts, but we also need to be real with people. The state is huge. The NHS is huge. We cannot magically overnight stop that spending. We need to make some structural changes. But there are some things I think we could do that would help ordinary people. So, for example, 1 in 5 people now pays the higher rate of tax. That was meant to be only a tax for the very, very wealthiest. That's not the case anymore. We should raise the threshold for the higher rate of tax. We should look again at introducing a lower rate of tax, a 10% rate of tax. Tax cuts are not the magic bullet, but they certainly will help put money in people's pocket, and in a much more sustainable way than cash handouts, because that will make a difference to people's pay packets each and every month. And over the long term, it will stimulate the economy and stimulate growth. So yes, we should do that, but that isn't the only answer. I think one of the things we need to do is be very real with people. This is a global economic crisis. The government cannot solve everything. And I think one of the problems of COVID and the legacy of COVID is that we've led people to believe that the state is the answer to every problem. Yeah. And I'm afraid it isn't. And too much state intervention mentioned, causes a lot of harm.
And this is the thing, we've had this real push and pull, haven't we? And it's within politics generally, particularly within the Conservative Party, of actually the state being constantly asking Rishi Sunak, stand up every week, give us some more money to help people with the state of the economy. Not entirely global forces. A lot of those are a result of lockdown and government policy over the years anyway. And then at the same time, there's demand for tax cuts. Now, a lot of Tories would say, government pulling back and taking less money from people and individuals, families and businesses is the answer for growing the economy, and then we all get richer. A lot of other people, it seems on your benches, want the Tory party to be almost Labour Party light.
Yes, that's right. There is that division. And as I said, we are a broad church in a two-party system. Each party has to accommodate a huge range of views. But I think this is where we need the Prime Minister and the Cabinet to step up into that leadership, to set the vision, to be real about the challenges that we face, and then to stick to the principles. And I think one of the problems that our government, that many governments that we have in our political culture, is that we constantly respond to people's demands, to outrage, to what seems popular. And actually, you don't get anywhere in the long term by doing that. You have to be willing to be unpopular. Now, I'm no Thatcherite. Margaret Thatcher did a lot of damage in my area in South Yorkshire, I have to say, that many of us still haven't recovered from. But what she did have was this commitment to sticking to her principles, disregarding almost the midterm polls and getting on with what she believed was right. And I think that's what we've got to do now.
Okay.
If we aim to be popular, we'll just be carried on along by the waves. If we aim to govern well and make good decisions, then support will grow off the back of that.
OK, I think a lot of people will be smiling along and cheering to that idea. Difficult to govern well when you're facing a whole barrage of bad news. The latest is these plan for a strike over, well, effectively it'll take a whole week. RMT, 50,000 members going on strike could bring the country to a standstill. Even those who don't get trains, well, the roads are going to be massively affected as well. What should the government do?
Well, I don't think in the immediate term there's anything the government can do. I mean, it is hugely disappointing. I mean, I understand rail workers, like everybody else, are feeling the squeeze. But during the course of the pandemic, the railways received billions of pounds of taxpayers' money. Nobody lost their job. Nobody was furloughed. And let's be honest, it's an absolutely crucial piece of national infrastructure. There are people who won't be able to get to work and won't get paid as a result of those strikes. There are people who will decide that actually they're going to work from home from now on because it's too unreliable. This will have a big impact on our economy, and it's very disappointing that they've chosen to do this. So in the short term, I don't know what exactly the government can do, but obviously we've got to hope that, public opinion is such that they change their minds.
Should there be a ban on essential workers like rail workers going on strike and independent bodies that actually set a fair pay deal for them every year?
I don't think there should be an outright ban. I think the right to strike is important in a democracy, but perhaps the rules about the thresholds that need to be reached in terms of the voting need to be looked at again.
OK, right. I think for some reason the line went a bit funny then, but Miriam Cates, it's been an absolute pleasure having your company. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.